Hi, I'm Laura Stringer. I'm a product management expert and principal consultant of Ninth Fourth, helping software executives accelerate growth, prepare for funding rounds and exits, and meet all kinds of challenges from strategy and road mapping to process, experience, and delivery. Many products rely on data to function correctly and to show information that's useful. Getting that data right is so incredibly vital. That seems like a really obvious thing to say, but you might be surprised to learn that a lot of data reliant product teams aren't actually focused on clean, consistent, and organized data. So, why is this so important? Because if you don't have the right data, your system's not going to work correctly, and your product won't show the right information. It won't do what people are expecting it to do. But it gets worse than that, because if the product shows incorrect data, users don't think to themselves, gee, maybe this data point hasn't been updated in the database. Instead, they just assume that the whole product is broken and they write it off as useless. So users don't usually understand the distinction between the data and the functionality, nor should they have to. So you can build the best product on earth, but if it's using bad data, it's going to look broken and it's going to be broken, and it's going to look like the product itself is broken and bad. Lots of factors can lead to poor data quality in a product. Sometimes the data is coming from multiple places and fed through all kinds of different processes that produce slightly different outcomes. There might be a normalization process that isn't happening right. In fact, I just worked on a product that integrated data from several sources, from spreadsheets to file inputs to external databases. And one of the biggest challenges was understanding and agreeing on the source of truth for each data point. Sometimes a product is exposing data that no one's looked at in a long time, if ever. And the assumption is the data's fine because it's never been touched, but it might be outdated or it might be, never correct or never entered and no one ever checked on it. Sometimes the team responsible for the data is completely separate from the product team. In fact, that is often the case. And so the data team might be so confident that everything is correct and up to date that they will just refuse to verify anything. And if there's a problem, it gets blamed on the product team. So the data team has not a lot of incentive to actually make sure their data is good and launch a cleanup initiative. And sometimes it's a little bit of everything. So, story time. Once upon a time, I built a really cool store locator. My team replaced a basic search feature with a much more modern locator, including more robust search and filter options, plus a map displaying pins at each store location. Each store also had icons that represented the different services they offered at each place. Because we were doing such a dramatic modernization, we were exposing a whole bunch of data points that had previously existed in the database, but no one had ever used them in any way. For example, the services had never been shown in any public-facing place before. The map pins relied on latitude and longitude data, and that data had always existed in the database, but no one had ever used it or looked at it for anything. And this was an unreasonably fast project. It was just a few weeks to build the whole locator from zero to final launched product. So there wasn't enough time to do a lot of the basics that I would normally do when building a new product. And one of the things that I really regret not being able to look at more closely was the data cleanup, which was controlled by an entirely separate team. And while I had no authority over the data team, I did make it very, very clear that the new store locator would be using these additional data points and listed the ones that we planned to use so they would know. And I stressed the utter extreme importance of ensuring that that data was accurate. I explained the new store locator would not appear to function correctly if the data was wrong. And the data team replied with absolute confidence that their data was totally complete and correct and up to date. Their store updates, all the stores update their respective data regularly, so there's nothing that would ever be incorrect. Everything is perfect. Even when I reminded them that we'd be exposing data points that no one had ever used before, so stores might have been a little lax in updating them or checking on them, they were super adamant that all their data was completely buttoned up. They were honestly, they seemed insulted by the fact that I was even asking about it. So at that point, there was nothing I could do except raise the risk with my own leadership and move on with the work that was within my control. And you can guess where this is going. So fast forward to our first stakeholder demo. Everyone noticed something strange. A whole bunch of stores were pinned in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we definitely did not have stores there. Now, the cause was immediately obvious to me. That location in the middle of the Atlantic is 0 latitude, 0 longitude. So it just means that that lat long data is missing for all of those stores. And the locator, instead of failing horribly, was just pinning them to 0, 0. The cause was less obvious, though, to all of these stakeholders who just declared that the locator didn't work at all because all these pins were in the wrong place. They told everyone who would listen that the whole project was a total failure. And the data team still refused to check the data, even though I now had very clear evidence of data quality problems. They would not believe that their data could possibly be incorrect or missing. My engineers had to spend days testing and retesting and reviewing code to prove beyond a shadow of any doubt that the product's logic was fine. And only then would the data team consent to a review. We lost precious time from an already very, very tight schedule. And my team took a reputational hit because stakeholders complained about the locator and thought it didn't work correctly. And then we had problems with the services icons because a lot of stores had the wrong services listed in the database. And here again, there were obvious errors, like a store in a totally landlocked country that was offering marine services, as well as less obvious errors that showed up over time. And once again, the data team refused to even look at the data until my team proved again and again that the functionality was fine. We lost more time and more reputation. And it turned out that the product's functionality and logic were totally correct all along. It was perfect. There was no problem at all with the locator itself, but that bad data had eroded everyone's confidence in the product. And by the time we were able to prove that the locator worked and get all of that data corrected, the launch deadline was super close. And because of that eroded confidence, the primary stakeholder did not actually feel comfortable approving the launch. So we did eventually launch the locator and got a lot of compliments, and years later, it's still working well. But at the time, my team took an L because we were not able to meet the launch deadline. And so many key stakeholders who didn't understand the nuance of data versus logic just thought we plain did a bad job. And all of this could have been avoided with a data review up front. Had the data team asked their stores to update all data points when I made the initial request, we would have launched on time, and the product team would have been heroes for the exceptionally fast turnaround that we did deliver. Data cleanup is a lot of work, and it is not sexy work. It's not the work that's going to make for a beautiful PowerPoint slide or a really cool demo. It's not the kind of work that's easy to brag about, but it is so incredibly vital. It will make the difference between a data product that is helpful and valuable and a data product that everyone just assumes is trash and can't use. If this sounds like something that you've been struggling with, or you think this might be a problem for you, please reach out to me. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I will post a link to my profile and to my website below. Let's talk about how to understand and plan that data cleanup effort alongside your product build out and how to catch these problems before they become crises.